Welcome to the Dr. DigiPol Show. I am Alan Rosenblatt, your host, aka Dr. DigiPol. We've got a very interesting show today. Our first guest is going to be Michael Sabat from atmssg, a very interesting and cool new tool for doing mobilization of people on Facebook. I'm going to bring him up, of course. Afterwards, we're going to talk about the Comey hearings. I hope you all watched it this morning. It was riveting television. But to start, let's see if we're successful at bringing Michael up onto the screen. And is he here?
I can see me. Can you guys see me?
Michael, are you there? Okay, I see you there, but I don't hear you. Let's see what I can do here. Okay, yeah, I can see and hear you now on my Facebook. All right, I'm going to get some feedback until it comes up on the screen here. Hold on, I'm going to try it again.
Me?
All right. All right, Michael, I can see you.
Can you hear me?
I've got a bit of a weird setup here because I'm going to hear you twice. So I'll hear myself when I ask you questions, but it'll all work out good. So welcome to the show, Michael. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Well, so Michael, we met last week and we talked about maybe it was 2 weeks ago. We talked about your new tool called atmssg, @MSSG, right?
That's
what I
it.
want to know is, tell me what it's about. What is atmssg and what made you decide to create it?
Yeah, so atmessg is a software platform, and we power automated conversations over Facebook Messenger. We call them scripts. So I work with organizations to set up a script where a message comes in and we respond to that message, a message goes out, we respond to that message, so that an organization can communicate with a user over Facebook Messenger. We then take these scripts and connect them to Facebook ads or other types of promotions that get a user to start the conversation. And the way we're starting to work with organizations is with their marketing, their digital ad buy teams, or really anybody, the social media managers out there promoting, they can drive people into a conversation on Facebook Messenger instead of driving them to a landing page. Because when you send somebody to a landing page on their phone, the conversion rates are lower than that same page on the desktop. So when someone's on the phone, we can now send them into a conversation instead of a page and get better results, more data collected, more conversions, more donations, whatever the action is.
So what is it about using Facebook to send people to a web page that actually makes them not want to do it on the phone?
Sure. Well, I don't think Facebook's necessarily in that equation. I think that the web page is a holdover from the desktop. And when we invented phones, or when Steve Jobs invented phones, or whoever we credit that to, said, hey, we have to put something here. And so we took this page, which is designed on a 21-inch or a 27-inch beautiful Retina display MacBook, and then we smash it down to 4.5 or 5.5 inches and call it responsive and try to do our best. And so essentially, I think the web page is not native or doesn't work well natively on a phone because you just don't have the space, right? And that's what a web page is. It's two-dimensional space, which you don't have on a phone. And I think the more natural behaviors on the phone are messaging, scrolling, taking pictures, and doing these different interactions. And a page just is a holdover from bringing everything from the computer now onto the phone. But I don't think it's the best interaction.
Got it. Got it. Got it. So, by driving people to Messenger on their phone instead of to a web page from a Facebook ad or a Facebook post, how much better is your conversion of getting them to do what you ask people to do?
Yeah. So it's a new space that needs to be optimized. In initial testing, the best we've hit is about, for a new donor, it costs about 250% less when you send the person to Messenger rather than directly to the page. And that's the high watermark. What we see is that starting a conversation, in this case, Messenger, yields incredibly high response rates for data collection and conversion consistently. And any and all of the variance involved with this is in the act of starting the conversation. So once the conversation starts, we see between 40 to 60, sometimes as high as like 70 or 75% conversion rates for email address. And then the conversation goes on, and we collect phone number, we collect zip code, address, donation amounts, things like that. All very high response rates. But it is a new canvas that needs to be optimized. So I just ran a test with a political campaign. It was the first time we put emoji in the messages, and the response rate was much, much higher each subsequent message. And I don't know if it was because of the campaign necessarily and the subject matter, or because of the emojis. So it's very much a new canvas where there's a whole bunch of testing that needs to be done. But the initial results are insanely promising.
That's really impressive. Have you been able to see improvements in conversion on the desktop for people who are using Facebook on the desktop and taking action? They also seeing a boost?
Well, unclear. Facebook doesn't tell us that, and it's harder to segment. So Facebook doesn't tell us. It's harder to segment those people out and track it, right, compared to if it was a link to a desktop. This is a detailed answer. When it starts as an ad and we're beginning the conversation with the user going from ad into Messenger, that will almost exclusively happen on the phone because Facebook only shows that ad to people on the phone with Messenger installed. I work with other clients the same clients in some cases, but in other types of campaigns where someone shows up to the Facebook page and they send in a message. And in that case, we automatically reply to that message and say, hey, we're excited to hear your story. Please reply with your email address so we can stay connected. And in that case, it's really if they did not use @message to collect an email address, or if there's any other services out there that do something similar, I don't know about them. But if they did not respond and ask for an email address, that conversation would either go unanswered or maybe someone would manually respond a few days later. So in that case, they're staying on the desktop, they're in Facebook, where it would be like we're getting information and acquisition where there would not be any acquisition option without kind of a system to respond to their message.
Great. Well, that makes a lot of sense. I want to ask you about kinds of things you can ask people to do with your system. But if that's built into the slides that you have presented, we'll go to the slides, or we can start with that question.
Yeah, let's start with that question. It's not necessarily in the slides. The best analogy is to think of a conversation in Messenger and what we're doing with that message. Think about it like a web form. So instead of sending the person to a landing page where they would give information in a web form, we're doing that in a conversation. There's a whole lot more engagement that can happen, but that's the best place to start. So, one example we did around the election was message in your address, and we'll tell you where your polling location is, right? And much more interesting and dynamic. And you have the address of your polling place on the phone now, so you can take it with you. You're one click away from opening a Google Map on your phone, compared to doing it on the desktop, where the lookup generally happens. You're probably not taking your laptop in the car with you and using it for directions. But so anyways, it really is about data input and getting information back and doing it on the phone and doing it effectively. The best example is a web form. But hey, message in a selfie of yourself. We'll put a mustache on it and send it back. Obviously, you need to do some extra stuff there to make that work. But sending in pictures, being able to kind of engage at that level. But the best example is a web form. And when you talk with digital marketers and people that kind of need to meet goals and drive outcomes like that, it's really about acquisition, data collection, driving actions, whether those be advocacy or donations. That's where we're starting.
Got it. Got it. So, among the things that I think you and I talked about with different things that we could apply, I like the idea of, texting your address will send you a link to a map showing you where your polling precinct is. I think that's great. But fundraising, you mentioned, survey questions. Um, what else? Taking advocacy action, anything that involves collecting data. So it's pretty useful for all aspects of a campaign, of a political campaign. It really is very versatile.
Yeah, again, similar to the comparison of a web page or a web form, any reason, well, I guess I should say a lot of reasons that you might get an ad or might link somebody, out of Facebook to a page. We're going to be able to do most of those over messaging. The overall example is, when someone asks like, what are the use cases? There's some type of conversion. So it's not just we want eyeballs, or it's not just we want someone to watch our video. There's some type of like conversion or return there, and data collection is part of it. And when you're starting, and this is a brand new space, right? So Messenger has only been open for about a year for organizations to build on top of it and communicate with people over it. The APIs have only been available for a year. So, as I'm starting, I'm saying what use cases are interesting to every organization out there. And, well, for most of them, driving donations definitely, perks them up. And so solving that use case is kind of interesting to a large number of organizations. So a lot of the focus has been there, but I do, campaigns helping to drive engagement and acquisition for clinical trials, other type of survey and data collection campaigns. But development and fundraising is just interesting to almost everybody in the space.
Right. Can you explain a little bit more about what you mean when you say Facebook Messenger is open, the API is open? Can you just make sure everybody is up to speed on that?
Yeah. So Facebook has been peer-to-peer since 2010 or 2011, when they bought a messaging service and turned it into Facebook Messenger. And you've always been able to message individuals and potentially a lot of pages you could message in. But about a year ago, in April 2016, they opened up an API for this. So now a software like atmessg can sit behind the Facebook page and can build automated conversations that take place over Messenger. That wasn't available before. So before, the only option might have been to do manual chat, have a person there responding manually. And a year ago, it opened up so that you can, build automation on top of it and build a system so that you can do more with it.
Got it. Got it. Well, why don't we walk through the slides that you've given us? Just let me know when to advance the slide, and we'll go from there.
Cool. So let's start with this one for a second. Yeah. So the reason I wanted to bring a few slides is this is a new space, and there's new terms, new pieces, new parts, and so it helps just to kind of define what those are and walk through an interaction. So a standard process, and where I start with clients is, hey, you're doing Facebook ads. Let's take some of these Facebook ads, and instead of sending the clicker to the page to convert, let's send them into a conversation. And again, this is interesting to the growth marketers and the digital, paid advertising people at organizations, because they know most of these ads, especially on Facebook, are showing on mobile. And when the user clicks, they're going to a mobile page, and they know that mobile page is harder to convert visitors than it would be on the desktop. So if you want to go to the next slide, the process by which this all happens is that this is a normal ad in Facebook. So if you're a Facebook ad manager, you're building a traffic ad or a conversion ad and going through your normal targeting, your normal custom audiences, lookalikes, however you do this, those demographics, all in the Facebook ad manager. On the last page where you're setting up the destination in the image, like you're actually creating the ad and saying this is where the ad goes, instead of choosing a URL, you'll now see in the Facebook ad manager that you can choose Messenger and you can build a welcome message in the ad manager. So this new type of Facebook ad is commonly referred to as Messenger destination ads, or Facebook ads with Messenger as a destination. The new type of ad, you build it, and then you also, as part of the ad, build a welcome message. And this is all created in the Facebook ad manager. And so the user flow is they click on an ad on their phone, they route into Messenger after they click the ad, and they receive a welcome message. And that's what we're seeing on this slide, right? Going from Facebook ad to the welcome message. And now as we go to the next slide, once the user engages with that welcome message, atmessg begins to power the back and forth conversation. And that's what we're seeing in the middle panel here. So the user clicks the ad, gets the welcome message, clicks a button or engages with the welcome message, and then they go back and forth through a conversation. And in this example, it's to drive donations, and we're asking, it could be whatever the organization wants, but we're saying, hey, thanks for messaging in, thanks for clicking on our ad. First, tell us your email. They respond with their email. Great, tell us your address. Great, how much would you like to donate? Reply with that now, and we'll help you complete that donation. And so the interesting thing to make this easy to start for an organization is, as the conversation's happening, we're collecting, atmessg is collecting all of that data, and we're saving it, we're normalizing it, and then saving it in the database, in our database. We then send the user a button. And when the user clicks that button, we open the client's, the organization's donation page. And we take all of the data that we've collected in the conversation and we fill that into the donation page inside of Messenger to make it as easy as possible for that person to convert, but they're still converting on the organization's page. So it's something that you can start and test and pilot very easily. We're not setting up new flows of money or new transactions. We're going kind of delivering it to the existing endpoints, is existing pages where transactions take place. And that's what we're seeing on the far right panel here. So driving people to the place the organization would normally drive them. The difference is by the time they get to that page and they're asked to enter their credit card to complete the donation, all their information comes along with them, and we pre-populate that in the form. And so, as I mentioned, we're launching these campaigns and we're testing ad sets. So the general engagement with an organization is, let's take an ad that's working for you and let's send some of the traffic to Messenger instead of the URL. And then let's test and let's look, what does it cost to get a new donor when they go to Messenger versus when they go, directly to the URL. And so we're finding two things. Number one, when we do it right, more people get to the bottom of the funnel. And so that means for every ad dollar spent on Facebook, more people are making donations, right? And that's what we're seeing in this graph here. The far right of the graph is the end, the conversion, right? That's the bottom of the funnel. And so when you send somebody into Messenger, they're more likely to make a donation than if they go to the landing page. The second and really interesting thing as well, we sort of weren't expecting this, but it makes total sense. When they go into a conversation, or let me back up, when they go to a page, it's a binary outcome. So when you send them to the page, you either get their name, email, address, donation amount, and transaction, or you get nothing. And that's what we're seeing in the red part of this graph. When you send them into the conversation, it's what we're calling an incremental funnel. And that means the first message says, hey, what's your email? And they respond with their email. And as soon as they send it in, we have it. And then we say, what's your address? And again, as soon as they send it in, we have it. So even if the person doesn't get all the way down to the conversion step and complete that, we get all of the partial data along the way. So we're building the email list for the client just by driving these campaigns, and those results are incredibly high. I think on this example, 46% of the people that clicked the ad gave us their email. So those results are just incredible. And so even if the person doesn't complete, then the organization has an opportunity to follow up and get them to complete. The other kind of flip side of that, and I only put my finger up because we have a delay there. I didn't want to interrupt. But the flip side of that is if you're running an acquisition campaign where the goal is to collect emails, to sign petitions, to get phone numbers, or whatever it might be.
Load the important stuff.
Yep. Whatever the goal might be. Sorry, we just had a delay. There's no reason, once you have that information, you can always say, hey, by the way, thanks for being acquired or signing our petition. If you'd like to make a donation, reply with the amount now. And there's never a reason not to ask another question if you want to, because there's no cost, the same way there is a cost to add another field to a web form. And so campaigns that would stop with that data collection can now keep going and raise funds or take a higher level of action because there's never a reason not to say like, oh, and will you do one more thing for us? And then, sorry, I wanted to pause. That's the end of the slides. So that's what we're seeing, right? More people at the bottom of the funnel and more data.
Tell me, is there? You mentioned some scenarios where you can go back on a second day, right?
Yeah. So we have retargeting built in, so you can follow up with the person, and a little drip campaigns built in, so you can kind of do the next message with the person. But
yeah, so the idea you can go back and the next day you can ask follow-up questions.
Yeah, exactly. We can retarget people. We can follow up based on filters. So if the person doesn't have an email, we can follow up the next day and ask for their email and build out a little drip series so that we can follow up with the person and keep it going on Messenger. And maybe somewhere we want to lead is the detail of the different approvals. Right. So I guess I'll pause there. And if you want to go down that road, we can. And if not, if that's too much detail, we can stop there.
Yeah, I'm actually curious about this. The idea that you were talking about, that there are different arrangements that you can make with Facebook as to whether or not it's a next day follow up or a subscription. Different scenarios in which you can access the same people with with its technology and go back and follow up questions.
Yeah, exactly. So there are two types of approvals in Facebook. So when someone messages in, we have the ability to message them back and have a conversation, but it isn't necessarily an opt-in the way getting someone's email is an opt-in. Facebook has two approvals for Messenger, and they're fairly strict and detailed on how they work with organizations to get it approved. So you just have to do it. It's not a good idea to skirt the issue. The first approval is called Pages Messaging, and that's fairly simple to get approved for. We just have to show that the system works. And with Pages Messaging, someone messages in or starts the conversation in some way, and that's always a requirement. The user always starts the conversation. There's no just blasting out to people. But with the first approval, Pages Messaging, the user messages in, and then we have 24 hours to do any messaging we'd like to do with them. And you get a 24-hour window from the last incoming message from the user. So we can specifically ask for promotions. Sorry, we can do promotions. We can ask for funds in a donation setting. We can do marketing with the user. The second type of approval is called Pages Subscriptions. And this is much more where, like, when the user messages in, they're opting in to receive future ongoing messages from the organization. This is a separate approval that you have to apply for separately from Facebook. And the specifics here are it cannot be for marketing messaging. So Facebook will only approve campaigns about news, productivity, and personal tracking. So you cannot build a list and market to them in the future. You would have to send future messages based around news events. Now, once the user responds to a news message, right, like what's happening today with the testimony or something like that, if they respond and engage, then you have a 24-hour window to do marketing or promotions if you choose.
Got it. But if you're also collecting email addresses as part of this process, you now have the ability to go interact with them through email, even though you're not allowed to on Facebook.
Of course, the approvals are only on the messaging channel. Collecting an email, you can email them. Collecting a phone number, you can text them as long as you say we're going to text you or call you. All of that is it's your data once they message it in.
Got it. Got it. Well, that's really good. Do you have any examples that you can tell us about some of the things that some of your clients are doing?
Yeah, again, it's mostly fundraising. It's all fundraising and data collection. So working with a client, the general approach is, hey, talking to the growth people and building examples to collect data and drive transactions from Facebook ads. So doing a very large test now. And it's built for these growth marketing teams. The platform atmessg is built for them. So we're doing a large test where I think we're doing 3 different ads across 6 audiences to test messaging. We're also testing, direct to a landing page to collect data, and testing the lead ads in Messenger, in Facebook to see, what works best to collect data. And then again, the interesting thing with atmessg is with atmessg and not the other channels, we're able to say, hey, make a donation if you'd like after we collect that information. The new thing is, so I've been starting with ads, and it just makes sense, and it's an advantage for organizations if they can drive data acquisition for a penny cheaper here and there, and you can really test it and really measure it. But where all this is heading is moving towards organic. So that social media managers can see something happen at 12:30 in the morning, like the Covfefe thing, and by the time everybody wakes up, they can post on social media and say, hey, click here, send us a message and tell us what you think Covfefe means, and they can drive engagement and acquisition quickly, instantly over Messenger, where to set that up as a web page, it doesn't make as much sense, right? To say, hey, click here, tell us what you think Covfefe means, and then fill out our web form to become, to get on our list or whatever. It's just much more natural if someone's on Facebook for some things to drive them into Messenger for engagement and data collection and activation in some instances. Either way, we can move fast because it's a conversation, which can be set up, in 5 minutes versus a page, which takes more and takes longer.
And where are you going next? What do you have on the development board? What features are you looking to add? What interfaces are you looking to add to the mix here?
Yeah, thanks. Really great question. I'm always debating, should I keep it top secret or not? But I read something about Tesla putting his master plan online, and everybody said it better than keeping it secret. So, what's really interesting and sort of a secret we weren't expecting is that when you're in a donation conversation,
I got locked up.
when you say, respond with a donation amount and we'll help you complete that donation, you'll get people that respond $25 and $50, and it just works. So people will do that. But you'll also get what's unexpected. You'll hear people say, I can't donate now, but maybe in a week. Or I get paid on the 15th. And then sorry, I got kicked out for a second, but I think we're back, right? So I'll just keep talking, and hopefully it's interesting. We can patch it together. People will respond with language you may not be expecting. We're on a web form. You just don't get anything. If they want to donate next week, they try to remember to come back next week. So what we're building is the ability to kind of take these messages in, understand a little bit what the person's saying, and then make it easy for an individual to follow up with them directly to facilitate whatever action they want, and then have a little intelligence to segment, but tools to make it easy for the social media manager to follow up.
It seems that I'm having some difficulties here. Let me see what I can do about it.
So I'm not sure if anybody can hear me, but if they can, the most interesting thing is that messaging is a new channel. The same way 20, 30 years ago, email was a new channel. There's going to be new best practices that come into play. There's going to be, campaigns that stand out and open it up. But thinking about this as a new space to kind of test, measure, drive actions, that's definitely the place we are right now. I would warn against the idea of the bot craze, which has been a little overhyped, this word chatbots. My kind of thesis on this is you want to stay away from, hey, user, message into us, and we'll try to answer your questions. And so I don't think that is the technology's there to do that effectively. I mean, I haven't seen anything that'll do that yet. So I'd say when you start, focus on outcomes you're familiar with, focus on like goals you can achieve, focus on campaigns that are already running versus trying to build this, amazing AI thing that's going to, basically do someone's job for you. Great, Alan. I think we're back and maybe better. So sorry, I just kept talking while we were down.
No, it's perfect. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, and instantly.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. Well, that was. I'm sure that sounded really interesting to our guests watching this, because there was a little bit of a gap here and there, but it's really interesting stuff. And when I first met with you and you showed me what this platform can do, I got very excited, not just for the advocacy side, but because I do work with an opinion research firm as well, and the idea of being able to do Facebook-based surveys, to be able to go back to people, the next day with a follow up. Now, let me clarify. You said that there's a 24-hour window. So if I do a set of questions today and you answer them, and then I do a follow up within like 23 hours later, do I get another 24 hours to follow up again?
Yeah, from the user's last message in, you have a 24-hour window. And that's only for the marketing stuff, right? So it's basically there's two approvals for Facebook. One is the instant messaging where you get 24 hours and they can be marketing messages. The other is more of a subscription model where when the user messages in, you can message them back after 24 hours. It just can't be marketing messages. So for something like a survey follow up, you can get approved for the longer term opt-in.
Would fundraising count as marketing, and would send a message to Congress be considered fundraising or marketing?
Probably or potentially, but the kind of way to approach this is Facebook will approve an organization to do news messaging in the future, productivity messaging in the future, and personal tracking. So for something like the survey example, that could probably be under personal tracking and get approved. For an advocacy organization, you'd probably want to get approved as sending out news alerts, and then be able to send it as news and potentially drive advocacy. But for the donation, the user would probably have to respond, and then you can say, oh, if you'd like to make a donation, here's how.
Got it. So because donation is more explicitly asking for money, it's much more akin to marketing.
Probably. And, Facebook's making these decisions, but, they said we approve news, we approve productivity, we approve tracking. And so we want to build the use cases around that.
So I hate to raise this kind of point, but it sounds like if Facebook changes their policy, it messes you up completely.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it absolutely could, right? They're building this ecosystem. There's a million ways they could change their policy, which would be detrimental. There's a million ways they could change their policies, which would be great. But
Right.
I think that's sort of true. In the startup-y world, there's the question, well, why wouldn't Facebook do this themselves? And what's your strategy if they do? I don't think there's a question or answer to that anybody can give, right? If Facebook wants to build self-driving cars, you can't defend against that. So, but yeah, it is a known risk of the space. Now, I think the best answer to that is I'm seeing already the inklings and hoping that it goes in the direction of more messaging channels open up a platform. So Twitter has opened up a direct messaging platform where from a Twitter ad, you can now drive someone into a DM situation and have a back and forth conversation, and they've built APIs for that. So an SMS is obviously a channel that is open and available, although under the carriers, and you face some of the same issues. But I think we're going to see messaging become a channel, the same way email is now a channel, and there are differences, but from a marketing perspective, you can work with Hotmail, Yahoo Mail, Gmail, but there are differences like the Gmail segmented inbox that you just have to account for.
Right. Well, it does certainly sound like as Twitter and other platforms go down this road as well, it makes it harder for Facebook to backtrack. That's number one for sure. And of course, everybody always has that sort of that dream that, well, if Facebook decides to do it themselves rather than build it, they could just buy you out, and then you have your exit strategy.
Yeah, of course. Yep.
Well, I am very excited about this platform, and from what I understand, it's a reasonably affordable opportunity. I know this. I don't want to turn this into a commercial, but can you give a ballpark range of
Yeah.
what it would cost to set up an account?
Yeah, I mean, low thousands of dollars per month. Sorry, low thousands of dollars to set up, and make it very easy. Obviously, this is going to be on the internet, and don't want to give hard numbers because pricing may change. But we're just not letting price be a factor if someone wants to give it a try and test it.
Right.
I would say though, most of the time these are going to be successful if the organization is already doing some type of promotions on Facebook or ads. So you want to have that level of sophistication where you have a social media manager, or you're already doing Facebook ads and driving acquisition or donations that way.
Right, right, right. Well, I really want to thank you for coming in and talking about this platform. It's really exciting. Again, it's at message. Tell everybody the URL again so people
Yeah.
know how to find you.
So with a name like that, I have horrible domain and Twitter handle problems, but it is atmssg. So at atmssg.com. And then Twitter handles the same, at symbol atmssg. I'll probably need to buy the better domain sometime soon.
So you got to be at messenger, which is
Yeah.
cool because you are at messenger is the name of the company, but you got that and it's two S's, as in the word message, as opposed to the abbreviation of message, which typically only has one. So again, for everybody, that's at atmssg.com. And I urge everybody to check it out. I think it's a really cool platform. It really takes that whole process of converting people from Facebook, which has always been very difficult, into a whole nother level. You know, another comment?
Yeah, the other thing to do is just open Facebook Messenger, search for at message, ATMSSG, and then send us a message that way. That's honestly the best way to do it and just get a feel for it. And then we check. We say, hey, if you want to chat, let us know, give us your email, and we follow up that way. So, we're kind of eating our own dog food where just send people into Messenger instead of the site.
Well, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time and look forward to hearing good things from you down the road.
Absolutely. Thanks for having
So
me.
we're going to Absolutely. So we're going to switch gears now and say goodbye to Michael. And I see my esteemed colleague Benjamin Barnett is back with us. I understand he's been fighting traffic, but I think this should be him. Let's see if we see him here. Ben, maybe you don't have your video up yet. I'm going to try loading you up in a second. Give you hopefully when I see you. There you are. Okay. Let me bring Ben up here. Spotlight, new pod, and there 210 and.
Can you hear me?
Could it be? Ben, welcome to the show.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Sorry,
All
my
right.
my lighting's a little off right now, but hey,
Well,
good to see you.
welcome back to the show. Always good to have you here. It's been quite a day in the political world, and set
Still
social
going
media
on.
on fire this morning. What'd you think of the hearing with James Comey in the Senate? It looked like a combination of the Senate Intelligence and Senate Armed Services Committee doing the questioning.
That's true. What did I think? This is true. I think that you and I chatted about this a little bit. I really believe that I didn't see or hear any type of smoking gun here. I mean, I really didn't see anything that would constitute obstruction. I see where it could be insinuated. I see a he said type of situation for sure. But I didn't see the clear evidence, and I was surprised. I have to admit, for sure.
So your reaction is that when the president says, "I hope you would stop an investigation," you don't see that as a directive? I mean, Comey said he took that as a directive.
Yeah. He also said that, yeah, I mean, look, I think the nuances here are gonna change. Like I just reviewed, I should say, before talking to the discussion with Senator Rubio, and it to me, Comey seemed to sort of go back and forth on whether he really felt that this was sort of an overall play or it was just more Trump being Trump. And one of the examples that I heard that Comey and Rubio had gone back on was things that he had said that then the president had said the next day in public. So I was wondering, how, is this really, obstruction? Is this more, idiocy of the situation? Or, can you, obviously in law, ignorance is not, an answer. So, I suppose if we look at it like that, it could be. I just wonder if that was really the intent. Is really what I'm trying to say. I really do. I went in there thinking it 100% was, and I really came out of this thinking that this president just really didn't have any idea what he was talking about. So where it goes, like
well,
these investigations, I don't know.
So it's interesting because last week on the Sunday morning talk shows, not this past week, but the week before, I know that John Brennan was on, who used to be the director of the CIA, and
Right.
he was pretty clear that a lot of times people who commit espionage against the country are duped into doing it. That they don't realize. So the whole Jared Kushner situation, where he probably didn't think that that's what he was doing, but in fact, if the Soviets recruited, the Russians. I had this conversation with somebody on Twitter earlier today about that. But if the Russians, basically sort of say, yeah, you should, give us some information, it would be really, really helpful to create this back channel to make things work out really well for your father-in-law, and that he then unwittingly starts to give them access or secret information or inside information, regardless of the fact that he didn't do it wittingly. It's still espionage. It's still a
Yeah.
crime. It's still treason. Right.
Well,
And
I
so
don't know where the treason, and treason's a different slope, but let's be fair. I mean, I feel that you're correct. I mean, it's, you're right. And I think obviously Kushner's a different discussion. And I think that situation is way more serious than we know right now, in my opinion.
But
right. Yeah. So, and I think, look,
yeah.
Go ahead.
I just, I keep thinking back to the power of the president's words, right? The president, when he speaks, has a very powerful impact on people's behavior. Rubio's exchange with him was very interesting in that he was trying to draw an equivalence between Trump making public statements similar in public the next day to what he said to Comey in private the day before, and somehow saying, well, if he said it in public, it isn't the same thing. And I think that's kind of where I think that was decisive for you. That was a big deal for you. But the difference I find is that it's in the way that message is conveyed and how it is received, and I hate to get all postmodern on this in terms of bringing in the expectations or the interpretations of the recipient as part of the process. But I hearken back to when George H.W. Bush was president, and about 2 years into his presidency, he did an interview where he made the comment that he was only now beginning to realize how powerful the word of the president was. That when he spoke in public, it had tremendous impact that he had not truly understood. Then we start thinking, Trump, when he tweets about companies, has had temporary but major impact on stock prices, right? Mm-hmm. That what the president says carries a weight that is far greater than what the president may necessarily realize they're doing. And that's why I think the difference between him saying this in public versus him saying this in private with James Comey after asking all the other senior officials, including Comey's boss, to leave the room so that he could be alone with him, that there's a whole nother level of, even though he said, I hope you would let this go. And I know Eric Trump tweeted earlier today that I've known my father for 39 years, and you can tell when he's giving you a directive because he doesn't say, I hope, he says, you will, kind of thing. See, yeah, that may be true when you're the kid and he's your father, or when you're the employee and he's the boss, but this is the president. And that is a different world. And the power of the president's word is extremely different and cannot be compared to the word of somebody who's just an ordinary citizen.
Yeah, I mean, look, to jump to the other side of the fence, I obviously agree. And that interaction, I saw that tweet, like, is to me the folly of this presidency. You're right. This is a father and son discussion, and I suppose, he's obviously talking from the Trump company's, standpoint as well, as somebody who's been a senior, person there for a long time now. So, obviously he's been in the room with some of their big deals, and they've done billion-dollar deals, hundreds of millions of dollar deals. So there's a lot going on. So I get that. Yeah. But that to me is definitely, makes me aware of sort of the folly of this presidency, is that it is this sort of imperial bedroom, discussion, and, that's happening here, that's providing the information, sort of like, I know my dad, so he, he'll do this, but, you're right. This is the president of the United States. We think it's fantastic, your dad, but right now it's not really what this discussion is even about. So, and the fact that he would respond like that to me shows, really like they're not thinking presidential. They're not there. So, and this gets back to, we were talking about, I believe last week, where there is clearly there's a different agenda here. I mean, there is a Freedom Caucus agenda. There is a Tea Party agenda. There is a religious right conservative agenda. There's your Gang of Eight agenda. There is a lot of competing interests in this party right now. And I do not believe Trump represents maybe any of them, I should add, because I believe he represents his family's business interest first. So, and that is where the collisions are happening.
So to that, let me just correct the record. It was Donald J. Trump Jr. that tweeted it, not Eric. By the way, yesterday I tweeted something obnoxious to Eric Trump, and he blocked me. So he apparently has been blocking a lot of people. He's a very thin-skinned individual. Meanwhile, I tweeted a bunch of things at Donald Trump Jr. this morning, and he hasn't blocked me yet, but I think it's only a matter of time. We'll see. Yeah, so one of the things that about you're getting at here is, the differentiation between Trump the president and Trump the businessman. And one thing I was curious, because interacting and looking at Eric Trump and Donald J. Trump Jr.'s Twitter pages today, one thing that jumped out at me was they both list themselves in their bios as executive vice presidents, different responsibilities, but of executive vice presidents of the Trump organization. Now, my understanding is that Trump stepped back from the organization and handed it over to them. So this is an organization that either has no president, or Donald Trump is still the president of the Trump organization, and his sons are still the executive vice presidents. Now, I went to the Trump organization website, and in the About section, it still has Donald J. Trump above, and then his sons, Eric and Donald Trump Jr. below, and lists them as executive vice presidents. It doesn't say that he's president, but he's still on the website. I also understand that while he's not involved in the day-to-day running of the company anymore, he has the freedom to withdraw money from the company at will without approval from anybody. So in this context, I can see why Donald J. Trump Jr. has trouble differentiating between Donald Trump, his father, and Donald Trump the president and the differences in the power of his words. So I think that that's really fun, really interesting. Now, the power of words, I think, is really interesting as well. There's an article in the Washington Post today after the hearing, which is fascinating. And it is basically a timeline of the hearing this morning with the chyrons, the lower third text for Fox News, MSNBC, and CNN as you roll through the real time of the hearing. And the differences in the way they present what is happening, the narration, the sub-narration of the hearing is extraordinary.
Yeah.
For example, Fox doesn't say anything about what Comey is saying for the first hour or so of his testimony. They just keep putting their awaiting statement from Trump's outside attorney. Like they have completely irrelevant. So while CNN very systematically and MSNBC less frequently are putting up quotes and summaries of and paraphrases of what Comey's actually saying on the screen, Fox is not doing any of that. And then finally, when it gets down to the presentation, some of the substance, Fox puts out, Comey says, President did not order me to let Flynn probe go. Whereas CNN is putting out that I took Trump's request about Flynn as a directive. Because Comey said explicitly that he took it as a directive, given the context of what the president was saying, along the lines of what we were talking about, that he was alone in the room with him, that his boss was asked to leave, and that while he did use the word "I hope," that there was a sense of, this is the head of the government talking. You report ultimately to this person. You can't just ignore this. It's a directive, and
Right.
it just striking in the differences in the way. The Fox News covers this versus the way CNN covers this. And, for all those people that are accusing CNN of being fake news, CNN was putting actual quotes of what Comey was saying. I was watching it in real time, and the match between the chyron and what Comey was saying for CNN was spot on. And the match between what Fox was saying, putting in the chyron, and what Comey was saying, there was a huge disconnect between those.
Yeah, I mean, look, forget what MSNBC or NBC or CNN, forget what they are. Fox News is propaganda. Like, it is. I mean, we could really get into this, as we talk, and propaganda is a heavy word here. I get that. But I'm telling you, in my opinion, it's propaganda. I watch Fox News for the reason that I want that sort of, radical, conservative response to this type of situation. And news isn't obstructing truth. I mean, that's not news. That's not Fox. That's not news to me. I mean, it can't be news to people. I mean, putting quotes up is what people are saying. And this is what, in a testimony like this, we as people should be given by the news. So from what you're saying, and I have not read that article, but, obviously I've done similar type of, things in the past, on different stories and things and looking at chyrons and things like this. This is clearly something to me that it's almost shameful, to be honest with you, to call it news. Now, I'm not saying it isn't entertainment or something on that level. It shouldn't be out there, but that's to me is shameful. All right. But I want to bring something back too, if I can, too, in terms of Comey, like you're saying, you sounds like he, believes that it is that he did obstruct justice, that Trump did. And so, and it's argued that, and I'm talking about this a lot, obviously, out there, in the constant argument I'm hearing is that he's laying it out. He's just not making a legal case, and his, whole piece here is, how fearful he was of being, of Trump lying, quote unquote, so he decided to do these notes, with the intent to create a special counsel. It's pretty incredible that he authorized a leak, for example. So, there is, which is pretty incredible, actually, that the director of the FBI actually did this.
I'm going to have to stop you there, Ben, because that's not an accurate. That's the GOP talking points. Comey released his own personal unclassified memos to his lawyer, his friend, a law professor, to share
Which
with the press.
discoverable. I mean,
He also gave those notes, those memos to Special Counsel Mueller, right? So, what he did was no different than writing a memoir, no different whatsoever than writing a memoir. Beyond that, the idea that, and the Republicans and the conservatives are kind of focusing, well, he never said it was obstruction of justice. His job is, in this case, he doesn't have a job in this case. His role is to simply report the facts as he knows them, not to draw conclusions from the facts about whether or not this rises to obstruction of justice. That is no longer his job. And so that's somebody else's, that's Robert Mueller's decision. That's the Senate Intelligence Committee. That's the House Intelligence Committee. That's their job to take the facts that he's presenting and decide whether or not this is prosecutable as an obstruction of justice. And so the idea that, all this parsing of his comments to say, well, he never said obstruction of justice and therefore it's not, it's a total red herring.
Well, I mean, look, it's not, I mean, this is just a fact. I mean, again, to your point, so I'm not sure whose talking point it is, but what I'm talking about here is, it's in his testimony, it's very clear and it's reported on, and you heard it, was that he authorized, after he was fired, to leak to the New York Times a memo about a private conversation.
Again, leaking, the word leak means you gave something classified away, not something that isn't classified. If it's not classified, there's no restrictions on revealing it. Therefore, it is not a leak. It is simply giving information.
His words, Al, here is he directed, quote, a friend to leak to the New York Times a memo about a private conversation he had. So, again, the talking points thing isn't the thing here. It's what he's saying and what's actually happening. So, and it just gets back to your original question, so because I wanted to, us to continue on, because I do believe that, there's clearly, I mean, look, the focus is on Trump now, right? So, how and what's he going to do? How's he going to respond to this stuff? And I think it's similar to the way he's responding is, very much he might be, inadvertently admitting to this, in public, for example. So I'm very curious to see him go off on tweets. I have a feeling his hands are like handcuffed to a desk somewhere right now. So like really, I believe what you're saying. My point is that, Comey's, at least from the way I looked at this, was his point was to lay out information out there. And really I think the goal here is to get Trump to continue to incriminate himself. And I'd be curious to see. I think that and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe did Trump say he would talk, in private about this matter? Is there, in terms of testimony?
I've not heard that, but that would be extraordinary.
Yeah, it would be. And I the way this ball's rolling down the hill here, obviously this ball's getting bigger and bigger. I'm very eager to hear right now what Trump has to say. And when you say you're talking about the talking points, you're right. What's being talked about out there on conservative radio, for example, is very much that there was no information provided, same stuff that's been out there. Comey didn't say anything new, et cetera, et cetera. In other words, sort of talking by and above and around the facts that are in quotes online everywhere on the planet now. So that to me shows that and this is one reason why we've had this conversation too before, but to tell our audience here is that there is no doubt that I believe that there is something, nefarious going on, between this family right now. And it probably did spawn from business, debt, things of this nature that they suddenly thought they could fix through the run for the presidency, becoming networked out there in this type of world. And it was probably a business idea for them, a business, development type of thing. Winning might not have actually been on the agenda here. I really
wasn't in the business plan.
Yeah, I don't think it was. I think it was to build an incredible network, look out there, meet donors, business people across the country, and have the party pay for it. Winning, I don't think, was the way it was going to go. But the point is, I'm curious to see where Trump takes this. I do believe that Comey laid it out there that this is really what he was thinking was happening. I really
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
So, and I think by
You
him
know,
admitting to leaking after he was fired, I really believe, like he said, I believe him when he says this, that he was looking to initiate a special counsel. So I think that's pretty incredible admission on his part. Shows you how extraordinarily sensitive he was in thinking, maybe that Trump would lie to do something or deceive him and create real issues. And this is the last point I'll bring up. It's very clear from the Freedom Caucus standpoint, and definitely true from the Tea Party as well, but the Freedom Caucus about their very serious distrust of our organizations like the FBI, CIA, NSA, and these type of organizations. So I believe there's a bunch of whispering going on in his ear right now that, taking on these type of groups, these organizations in government are what you should be doing. So I'm not sure that the Trump team out there actually sees this situation right now as a bad thing. I'm not sure Steve Bannon is sitting there thinking like, oh no, we're in the retreat. I would argue maybe quite the different, quite the opposite. So that's why I'm eager to hear Trump speak.
I agree with you because there's clearly a whole line of argumentation coming through conservative talk radio, Fox News, and inside the White House about the deep state, about the level of the government which exists below the political appointees that have an agenda that might not be consistent with the president. Ironically, 80% of the political appointees that Trump was supposed to nominate, he hasn't even nominated them yet.
Right.
He keeps complaining about that the Senate is dragging its feet with his nominations. Well, that's true for the 20% of the nominations that he's done, but there are over 400 senior political appointments that would overrule the deep state that he hasn't even bothered to put names for yet. And he's blaming that all on the Democrats in the Senate, and it has nothing to do with them at all.
I think a good example, speaking of red herrings, or maybe better yet, a canary in the coal mine, is the reports I've been reading and researching about the current relationship with Attorney General Jeff Sessions.
And he offered to resign.
Longtime supporter, clearly stood behind Trump like way early in the campaign. And now from, what I'm seeing out there, although through anonymous sources, that there's an issue and he offered to resign, like you said. So, that could be sort of, well, you think about if he says, I resign, Trump says, no, they agree. They actually then create a better type of relationship going forward, for example. So, it's perhaps they cemented a better understanding of how, Jeff Sessions wants to do that job. But I think that the key thing that I found in that moment that I found strategic was the ability for that relationship to go south so fast, which is clearly happening here a lot. And I am interested to see the next level in which investigations into Jared Kushner take. Because if he were to leave the White House, I truly believe that Donald Trump, the President of the United States, would stand alone and would become perhaps more paranoid than he already is. I think Jared Kushner leaving office, here would be a problem. Although I don't see him as any type of leveling force whatsoever, anything on that level. I see more Trump relying on him emotionally from a trust level than anybody else that he ever will.
Yeah.
So
I think you're absolutely right there.
Watch.
Yeah. I do see the talking points in terms of the whole FBI investigation. You've got the Trump message going out there basically saying, this is all about Democrats complaining about, the election and that, they're trying to undo the election. You got the Democrats saying that, no, we're really, I'm sorry, you got law enforcement and Democrats saying, no, this is really about the fact that Russia, basically was an aggressor here against the United States in a way that we should be concerned about as Americans. And I think you heard Comey exercise that as well. And then on top of that, you now have the issue of obstruction of justice. Regardless of which of those first two concerns matter or real, the bottom line is that if the president tried to obstruct justice, he'll go down for that no matter what was the original explanation. That's what took Nixon down. That's what took Al Capone down. It was not the actual issues that they wanted to take him down on. It was the fact that they caught them on the technicality. They caught them on trying to hide what they were doing, or hide the truth, or stop the investigation. Al Capone. It was tax evasion. instead of murder. Nixon, it was the cover-up, not the crime. The crime was a relatively small thing. The cover-up was what destroyed Nixon. And now we're looking at a situation where Trump is trying to say this is all about sour grapes of the election, and it's looking more and more and more like trying to obstruct justice and cover it all up.
Right. I agree 100% with that assessment, honestly. And, it's interesting for me to hear this sort of double tripling down on sour grapes, which is just complete hypocrisy and ignorance from a response on, why somebody's interested in seeing Donald Trump be impeached or lose next term in office or whatever it is. This is the type of bitter partisan politics that have been going on since Bush, Clinton, before, forever, at least in my lifetime. And I just see now it's the turn of the Republican. It's incredible to hear, talk radio, right-wing talk radio, talk about how, this whole, sour grapes thing, and, just a complete lack of admitting that in any level, the incredible pressure put on, President Obama, to lose, get out of office, not have anything pass, everything stalled in Congress, Senate, et cetera, it's the same thing. And to hear the right talk like they just cannot believe that the Democrats will do this is astonishing to me to hear this. Yeah, well, and I say it from the other side, too, to hear Democrats talk about it like the Republican, on the other side is like the Democrats never do it in these days, to me is astonishing. So, and I am, curious as to are people just simply not talking to each other here, and it's just this constant up and over.
Well, they're talking to their base.
Well, exactly. And that gets back to the point of sour grapes. I mean, if you think about how foolish of a political argument that is, it's sour grapes. You lost, so you're just bitter and you're going to try and defeat us. Well, no, we disagree in policy pretty extensively. So, yes, I will go out into the street or I will go into a voting booth or whatever to try and change this. Of course, just like you did, during the 8 years of Obama. This is what happens here. So, the sour grapes argument to me is so, it's childish to hear this type of response, as a reason why somebody would go out into the streets, because I just can't admit Trump will be president. Well, on my personal level, it's not about admitting he is the president, but, I will definitely work against those policies that I don't agree with. And that is our process. That is democracy. So I'm curious to where these arguments are coming from.
So. Obviously you and I will continue this conversation week after week because I don't see any of it resolving itself quickly. I don't see any of it getting boring.
Yeah, the midterm election is going to be big. It's going to be big. That's why Pelosi stayed in office and didn't, step down. I mean, they are looking to overturn this, and I would argue that they'll bring impeachment to the floor quick, especially if this stuff continuing to drag on and blow up like this.
We'll leave it. I'll leave the conversation for this week with one statistical point. As of this week, the percentage of Americans, according to the polls, that want to impeach Trump are greater than those that approve of the job that he's doing in office. So he's in the mid-30s for approval, and he's in the low 40s for impeachment.
I think a lot. That is an incredible number, by the way. And I would argue in the coming minutes or days or whatever it is when he starts responding to this type of testimony, those numbers can change very dramatically.
Yes, one way or the other. Who knows?
That's right.
It's such a wild card. Well, thank you, Ben. Really appreciate it. Glad you braved the traffic to get home in time. We'll talk to you next week. And as always, we're going to say we'll see you next week, and we will leave you with a little bit of head popping. Bye-bye.